Today's episode, we are going to be pulling apart a B motor. Now this is a mystery B motor, as you guys saw in the title of the show. I bought this motor from an off-road race team. It was a Lucas Pro buggy. And you know how you run into those situations where you buy motors from people and they say, oh, it has this, it has that, it's this, it's that. Well, we're going to pull the head off today and take a look. Supposedly this motor's been de-stroked. It makes 300 horsepower, etc., blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you guys in the Honda world know that that's not always how it goes. So what we can tell from the outside of the motor is that it is a B16A. Looks like a JDM block, since there's no other nomenclature after that, no number. It was sleeved by Dan Benson, and it looks to be a PR3-1, P30 head. Let's look up top here. So it is a P30. It's a B16 head, and it looks like it is a 95. Was made 12/1 of 95, so it's probably out of a 96, probably a 96. Let's take a look around the back here. These motors were ran on carburetors because the class that these buggies ran in were a 1600cc limited to carburetor. There was a bunch of different rules, so that's why they built these motors this way. As you can see, it has some sort of blocks or skunk tube manifold on it that's been cut, plated, welded shut. All the injector holes are welded shut, and it's got a Weber 44 millimeter carburetor on it. What's kind of cool is, from what I understand, they were having trouble with fuel atomization. It was getting too cold here, so they hooked coolant lines up and ran them around here to help atomize the fuel. So it's pretty cool. The intake air temp's been welded shut. You know, the throttle body plate's been cut off and welded shut. So we're not going to use any of this stuff in our build. But for now, we're going to get this thing taken apart and find out what's inside of our mystery B motor. Hey guys, one more thing before we get this thing taken apart. As you can tell, VTEC's been blocked off here. So they either locked the VTC or it's got VTEC killer cams in it. So we're not sure yet. We won't know until we get the valve cover off. Here we go. We're going to pull this thing apart. Guys, moment of truth. Here comes the valve cover off, so we get to finally see what's going on in here. Holy smokes. I don't know what this is, but it does not look good. It looks like metal shavings that might have dropped down. Wow, the valve cover's rusting. Wow. Okay. Well, I can see that we've got an awesome set of rockers in there, minus all this mess, and it's definitely got VTEC killer cams in it. Looks like Ferrea retainers, so it's probably got Ferrea springs and retainers in it. And I don't know whose cams these are, but we'll have a look. Got a set of looks like AEM or Skunk 2 cam gears, maybe a Toda timing belt. We'll get all this crap cleaned off of here when we get this taken apart and see what's really going on inside here. This is why you never buy a used motor and just slap some oil in it and throw it in your car, guys. All right, let's take it a step further. Let's get these rockers apart and have a look. So we got the oiling plates loosened up here. I'm going to go ahead and pull them off and have a look at our mystery motor. And it looks like none of that gunk was in the oil. I'm thinking maybe whoever had the motor in storage. No, I don't know. Looks like the valve cover was just rusting and dropping crap in there. Crazy. All right, let's get these oiling plates off. Definitely VTEC killer cams. Maybe this motor has more to it than I had anticipated. It looks like these are Evolution cam gears. So we'll get the cam caps off, get the cams out, and dive a little bit further. First cam's coming out, exhaust cam. Stand her up here. Looks like there was some writing on it at one time. I can't really tell right now what they are. Nothing stamped in the end. Definitely got some more of that rust stuff on it, but thank God it looks like the motor wasn't ran with that rust stuff in there. They silicone the crap out of those cam seals. We'll go ahead and get the intake cam off and have a look at. Here comes the intake cam. Again, nothing stamped in the end there, letting us know who made them or what they are. We'll give them a closer look in a little bit and see if we can't figure out who made them and what's the spec on them. Yeah, everything looks okay. The oil looks good. Oil looks clean. Just looked like it was all that rust stuff from the valve cover. Wow. It's definitely a nice set of rollers. So I think I figured out what happened to this motor. You know, in those off-road racing series, they don't run any kind of coolant in here. So what it looks like to me is that the car probably lost a head gasket and it pushed some water, and that's what happened to the valve cover. That's why it rusted. Motor pushed a little water, got up into here, and yeah, it looks like everything's going to wipe off and be cleanable and usable and salvageable, so that's a plus. So next we're going to get the intake manifold off, see if the head's ported. We'll get the rest of the brackets and such off, get the crank trigger off, and see what's inside this thing. Alright guys, we got the intake manifold off. Let's take a look at the intake runners. Alright, well, definitely looks like I've had some port work done. Definitely smoothed out. Probably had all kinds of chamber work done. The head's not like crazy ported though. Yeah, I see some rust down there around the valves too. So this thing looks like it definitely pushed a head gasket. So again, not a big deal. We'll get her apart. Next step, we're going to take the head off, have a look at the pistons, have a look at what valves are in it. We'll keep going. So far, this mystery motor is definitely paying dividends though. It's got ARP head studs in it. Yep. Alright, we'll get this head off and keep on rolling.
Another wicked mix.
Alright guys, so yeah, that's what it looks like. This thing definitely pushed a head gasket. There is all kinds of rust in the cylinders. Yeah, it leaked in there pretty good. I'm hoping I can clean it up, but it's not looking so good. But we'll keep moving on. We'll flip this head over. Let's have a look at the head. Alright, I got the head flipped over. Looks actually doesn't look too bad. Looks like we can cut this head again, not a big deal. We're almost to the indicator, but not quite. Just needs to be tanked. I don't see any issues here at all. Let's take a look at the head gasket. So it looks like maybe here had a little seepage right here. It looks like the bulk of the water's in 1 and 4. Worries me a bit, but I think I may be able to clean that up. It's definitely got pistons in it, some sort of aftermarket pistons. So we're going to take the crank pulley off and the brackets off, get this thing down a little bit further, and maybe get her flipped over and see what kind of rods are in it. So here's something kind of interesting, guys. They used a some sort of a Type R crank pulley. It looks like the single belt Civic Type R pulley. And they just made a little inductor wheel here for the crank trigger. Bolted it right through to the pulley. Cool little setup. It also looks like they were using the stock crank pulley as well as backup or primary and secondary. Again, this car had a carburetor on it, so what it had for management, for spark management, was just a crank pickup and then an ignition box that was triggered by the crank pickup. Alright guys, get the timing belt off here. Let's get this rear cover off. Looks definitely like a Type R oil pump of some sort. Looks like it's polished, so somebody's probably been in it. But it does have, it's, 96 and up oil pump, let's put it that way. It does have the provisions for the crank pickup on there. And the timing belt is, I thought I saw some writing on here. Who knows? It's blue. Oh, so far so good. We're going to keep breaking her down. This is kind of cool. Had some billet aluminum alternator brackets on it. Those will definitely get reused on the motor. I'm definitely going to put this motor back together, and it is going to end up in my car. So do a little all motor drag racing or maybe even road racing. Thing pretty much broken down. I'm not going to pull the water pump or the oil pump just yet. I'm going to pull this pan off. As you can see, this pan definitely designed for road racing. It is huge. It's got kickouts in the front and in the rear and down below. So I'm sure it's got a custom pickup and a windage tray inside and a pickup tray with some trap doors. So we'll get the motor flipped over and pull the pan off and see what kind of goodies are on the inside of this thing. We got all the bolts out of the oil pan. So you can see somebody put a lot of time into building this pan. I mean, that is definitely some really nice TIG work. So we got all the bolts out and we are going to lift the pan off right now. Let's have a look and see what's inside here. All right, Definitely a trapdoor pan. That's got a plate there. Let's see what we got down in here. That, wow, that's assembly lube. There are some metal shavings there, but all this is definitely assembly lube. Just never got drained out. I did find some assembly lube still on the head studs as well. So it looks like this motor was probably fresh when it let loose. Who knows why it let loose? The story I got was that a radiator hose had blown off the motor mid-race, and he wasn't watching the gauges or what have you, and just kept on going. So we'll get the pickup off. Get the windage tray off. Oh, you know what those metal shavings are? It's rust. It's rust from here. Yep. So this thing's definitely going to need a good cleaning. So we'll get this thing apart, and we'll see what's done to the crank and the rods. Alright guys, welcome back. So we got the windage tray unbolted, and we're going to pull it off right now. We'll have a look and see what's in this motor. Alright, I definitely see aftermarket rods. I see ARP main bolts. So let's put this windage tray down over here in the pan. Grab us a flashlight and let's have a better look here. Carrillos. So it's got Carrillo rods in it. You can see Carrillo. I don't know if the GoPro you can see with the light, but it says Carrillo right there on the end of the rod bolt. Still has the oil squirters in it. A little bit of rust on the bottom of the pistons. Yep, definitely ARP mains, Carrillo rods, and looks like there's some more rust down there. So yeah, it's definitely going to have to come all the way apart. And there is a number stamped on the piston. It looks like there's one handwritten in there. I don't know if the camera can catch that or not, but I don't see a manufacturer. I don't want to turn the motor right now until I can get in there and clean those cylinders out pretty good. I don't want to score the cylinder walls up on this thing at all, but it looks like it is definitely a fully built motor. We're looking at rods, pistons, you know, Carrillo rods, which are insanely expensive. Some sort of custom piston in it. We're going to check the bore and the stroke on this thing too, because I was told that this motor is de-stroked and it revs very, very high, like in excess. It makes power in excess of 10,000 RPMs, up around the 14,000 RPM range. So that would be the case if this thing has been de-stroked. It'll make it rev a little higher, well, a lot higher. So any of you guys wondering about my Honda background, I was the owner and operator of Whole Shot Racing here in Southern California for the better part of 7 years. I built Honda and Acura motors, had a race car that me and my partner built, and we campaigned in the NHRA Sport Compact Series. So that's where my Honda background comes from. I've been building Honda motors since before Hondas were cool. I'm originally a Volkswagen guy, and you know, I got tired of my Volkswagen and going fast but being very cold, you know, not being able to run heater boxes, and finally got a Civic that had heating and air conditioning in it, and put a cam in it and ported the head, and decided to go fast in comfort. So that's where my Honda stuff came from. I am definitely just a all-around car guy. There's an LS motor over there. That's an LS2 and a 4L60E that's going in my Chevelle. No matter what it is, I just like to go fast. This motor over here was out of our race car that we campaigned in the NHRA Sport Compact Series. This is an 85mm GSR that we built about 6 or 7 years ago. It's got a GT45 on it. Should make an excess of about 900 horsepower. It's just been sitting. That'll eventually make its way into this chassis as well, depending on what we do. Right now it's got a stock B16 in it. I'll show you guys that. So it's just got a header on it. I haven't even put an intake or anything on it yet. We actually just got the car running. Yeah, just a stock B16 LSD tranny. It's got a Y21 in it. It's real short geared, which would be great for that motor. So yeah, stick along with us as we continue to take this motor apart and see what's all inside of it. And in case you guys were wondering what I paid for this motor, I actually bought a whole bunch of motors from a Lucas off-road race team. They all ran Honda motors for a long time, and then they switched to Ecotec. And when they did, no one had any use for the Honda motors anymore. So I actually bought 2 motors like this with 2 bins about that size right there, full of spare parts, spare alternators, belts, parts, intake manifolds. Unfortunately, all the intake manifolds have carburetors on them. But at the end of the day, man, I paid $500 for all of it. Those guys don't have anyone to sell their Honda motors to. And from what I was told by the guy who ran the race team, these motors cost them in excess of about $15,000 to $20,000 a piece to build, and I got 2 of them plus spare parts for $500. So, you know, at the end of the day, you don't really believe people when they say, "Oh, it's this," or "It's built," "It's that." You know, you hear so much, you know, about these motors, but this one definitely built. Definitely got Carrillo rods in it. Definitely all ARP hardware. Definitely got VTEC killer cams. The head's been worked on. Not quite. The valves are not stock. Those are definitely aftermarket valves. So yeah, the head's been worked on. It's got these billet rockers in it. So definitely a deal for $500. So when someone tries to sell you a used motor for $500, don't always say no, because sometimes you score and you get lucky. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for this episode. Check us out next time when we get the rods and pistons out of this motor. We measure the stroke and the bore and find out what the CCs really are and find out if this motor is really de-stroked or not, and what else is done to it inside. All right, guys, you have a good one. Thanks for watching, and you guys all take care.